July 15th. I bring this to you because this is a very interesting card. Very interesting. And you think you know these guys, but I've come to tell you that you are a fool.
All right, we're coming to you hot ahead of UFC Fight Night, Makhachev versus Moises. I'm Kevin.
I'm Andrew, and we're here to give you the breakdown on some of the smaller, less known fighters. If you like what you hear, you can stick around and tune in every single week. We got brand new episodes, more coverage on every single event coming up.
I want to tell all you guys that we're here to get these small guys paid. It's time that Uncle Dana he coughed up some cash for these younger guys. Some of these lesser known guys, they're fighting their hearts out. They're getting the shit beat out of them. Think about the Chris Moutinhos in the world. We want them to get paid, and we want you to know who they are, and we want you to tune in for them because they're putting on a lot of good stuff that people just don't know about. So we're here to be your messengers. Hermes MMA coming at you hot, July 15th, 2021. Let's get into it. All right, so we're gonna kick this off with Miles Johns versus Anderson Dos Santos at bantamweight, and this is a clash of two powerful ground players. Johns is a pretty proficient wrestler, and Anderson has shown a good ground game in terms of jujitsu. So I think stylistically there it's going to be interesting, as well as on the feet. Johns he plays it very safe, and he has a good lead hand, hooks and jabs. Whereas Dos Santos he's more of a combo puncher.
Yeah, I think Johns has that really solid wrestling and on the feet, like you're saying. He doesn't throw too much volume, but he has these huge, heavy looping swings that I feel like, if they land, then they could definitely put you out. And Dos Santos, he's got an insane chin, just a cardio monster. We haven't seen too much of him on the offensive, but I know he's a heavy hitter and he can be a really great counter striker. So that should be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think John struggles with volume, and although he does have that good looping hook, I do worry about if he's going to be able to get going. So I see him being landed on a lot, but look for him to shell up and look for that one big punch.
Yeah. I also think Dos Santos, he has some great wrestling too, sometimes. I feel like it's a bit of I feel like he has some good wrestling in those panic moments where he's getting hit and
Mm.
he can really dig deep and go for that leg and go get it. And he can have a nice top game. He has some really nice guard passes. Got some heavy hips on top, so that should be really interesting. All right, next up we have Amanda Lemos versus Montserrat Conejo or Montserrat Ruiz. Some of you may have saw Montserrat's last fight with Ashley Yodler, I think, and she likes to utilize this one interesting position where it's sort of like a front headlock, but on the ground.
Scarfold.
Yeah, scarf hold. That's what it's called. So she's known for utilizing that a lot. She likes to go for some judo trips, and as far as the hands, we haven't seen too much, but we know the ground game is pretty solid, and she can hold people there and have some nice control for a long time. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the first key lock scarf hold finish in the UFC. She has an amazing finish. It was in Invicta. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Look up Conejo Ruiz Mirandin on Google, and the first result to pop up will be her last Invicta fight. Um, and basically, like Andrew was saying, she gets the woman into the scarf hold position, and then she puts her arm between her legs and just cranks on that thing. So it's absolutely brutal, and I can't wait to see one of those in the UFC. So every time she fights, I'll be crossing my fingers. And as for Lemos, she's a brawler. She has heavy hands, and she's ferocious. She has some very very ferocious leg kicks. She's not afraid to throw. So I'm worried for Conejo on the feet here, and I think if she doesn't get it to the ground, she's going to struggle immensely.
also, sort of going back to the ground game, Lemos did submit Amanda Granger in a very very impressive head and arm choke. So if it goes to the ground, she's not completely lost there. And as far as the feet goes, like you were saying, she has some really heavy leg kicks. Her striking is very fluid, and she's a good counter puncher. So I think it should be very interesting. If she keeps it on the feet, I think she gets the win. But if it goes to the ground, then I think it's sort of a 50-50 there.
I agree. I agree. Lemos is mean everywhere. She's mean on the feet. She's mean on the ground. So she's gonna make this dirty. She's gonna make it a scrap for sure. All right. So moving on, we have Rodrigo Nascimento versus Alan Baudot at heavyweight. And oh man, this one's a doozy. So Baudot is coming off of a crushing loss to the Englishman. Oh, his name's slipping my mind right now. Aspinall. I mean, Aspinall's on the up and up, so I don't think there's any shame in losing. But there is some a little bit of we have to examine how he lost, and he didn't look great.
Yeah, I mean everywhere really. The striking not super impressive. Kind of just leaves a lot to be desired there. And as far as the takedown defense goes, not super great. He's a bit sloppy there. He got taken down pretty easily and just dominated on the ground. I know a couple times I've seen people take him down and they just slide right into mount. So that could be a huge problem for him there. And like I said, the striking not super crisp or anything. We haven't seen a lot of offense. He gets backed up pretty easily. So
Yeah, and that Swiss cheese takedown defense is gonna be a real struggle for him against Nascimento, who is primarily a submission artist at heavyweight. He has a couple submissions on his record. I believe he has a heel hook was one of his last submissions against Dontel Mays, and then he also has an arm triangle against Martinek. So it's I mean Baldo, he throws a lot of spinning stuff. Like you said, the striking's not super crispy, but as we know, anything can happen at heavyweight. So in this one, I'm thinking look for either a highlight reel, spinning back elbow, Nascimento crumpling to the ground, or we're gonna see a pretty severe mauling.
right, but that being said, Nascimento is also he's not a slouch on the feet. He really lets the hands fly. He's got some big, heavy leg kicks. Um, and if they get into that clinch position, it's he has some nice trips, and I think it's over. But if he wants to keep it on the feet, I think that's definitely an option too. He's not lost there at all. All right, moving on, we have Rodolfo Vieira versus Dustin Solsvis at middleweight, and I think starting off with Vieira, he has some really nice wrestling. He's just this big, huge, meaty heavy, or sorry, middleweight. Um, he's an absolute grappling wizard, and I think if this one goes to the ground, it's pretty much over, because Dustin Solsvis, in one of his fights that I saw, his offense was he couldn't really get the offense going. I believe that was against Kyle Dawkins. The striking, he was moving back a lot, kind of just getting hit. That being said, he does have a great chin, but he did get taken down a couple times, and the ground game isn't great either. So
Yeah, Stoltzfus, I think he considers his biggest strength to be his ground game, and he is comfortable off his back. But like you said, against Vieira, I don't see how he's going to hold up there. The one question mark I do have in this fight is how Rodolfo Vieira's cardio is going to hold up. As many people know, his last fight against Fluffy Hernandez, he was on his back pretty much the entire first round. It was one of the most dominant grappling rounds I've seen this year. And then he completely gassed. He came out the second round like a zombie and was submitted after eating a bunch of punches to the head. So, clear advantage for Vieira on the ground. But if he can't get him in the first round, then things could get a lot more interesting.
right, and like you said, the cardio is a huge issue, and I think that just completely differs from Stoltzfus because even though he did get beat really badly in the Kyle Dawkins fight, he has a great chin. And all 3 rounds, he was surviving. And even late in the third round, he got up and he was coming forward. He was hungry for it. So I think if it goes into the later rounds, then there's definitely a chance for him to, pull something out. And, on the ground, he does have a nice leg lock game, too. So that could be something.
Yeah, I agree. I admire his resiliency. Kyle Dawkins, he has that sort of skinny boy strength that Some people seem to have, Bryce Mitchell comes to mind. Kind of these gangly figures that just manhandle people. And Stoltzfus, he didn't have a lot of success, but he did survive, and he was able to keep it flowing and try to mount some offense. So if he can get past the first round, I wouldn't count him out of it. All right, coming up next, we have Francisco Figueiredo versus Malcolm Gordon at flyweight. And Figueiredo, of course, is the ex champion, Davidson's brother, but his first fight showed none of the aptitude or things that people love about the higher ranked brother. He pretty much held his opponent against the cage for most of the fight, and if he does that against Gordon, or if he tries to, I don't think that's a path to victory. Gordon has a pretty good ground game, but he's pretty chinny and he likes to eat a lot of shots to the head. So I think this is a good fight for either guy to show something different. They can both exploit weaknesses that the other has. I want Figgy to open up with his hands like his brother, and I want Gordon to get him on the ground and let's see some of the crazy stuff he has. All right, and next up we have Khalid Taha versus Sergey Morozov. So Taha, he's a pretty muscular power puncher for bantamweight, and decent wrestling as well. Good from both stances. I think this is going to be a technical battle.
Yeah, Taha definitely has that crispy 1-2. He has some huge hands, absolute dynamite. And as far as the wrestling goes, he has some nice takedown defense. And one thing I noticed was he has really great balance in that single leg position. His leg is up in the air, but he finds a way to just back up and get on that cage, and he can kind of go from there and get right out of that, which I think is super impressive because I don't really see many people just kind of keep super composed when they're in that single leg. Usually, they get off balance and then they go down. But Taha, really great balance.
Yeah, I think Taha is the more well-rounded fighter here. One thing I will mention is both of these guys have struggled with volume in their fights, and I don't think that takes away from their technical prowess at all. This is going to be a high-level matchup, a lot of feints, a lot of well-timed entries, but maybe not so many hands thrown. So I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's two technicians going to work against each other.
All right, next up we have Daniel Rodriguez versus Preston Parsons. So Daniel Rodriguez was originally scheduled to fight one of the Nurmagomedovs, I believe, but he was replaced by Preston Parsons. We haven't seen too much from Parsons. He fought in, I think, an organization in the Middle East. He was champion there. We haven't seen too much of him. He only has a couple fights, I think, that we've really been able to see. So there's not too much known about him. And as far as Daniel Rodriguez goes, absolute just dynamite hands. He's super big, strong, welterweight. And I think Parsons is a little bit on the smaller side. So, that could be a problem for him. I know Rodriguez just likes to get in there and brawl. His chin is a little questionable. He has been finished, but I think that's where he's comfortable. Right in that firefight. So this should be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Rodriguez has that lumbering style that's aesthetic to watch. He has that straight left hand down the pipe that can just take guys out. He has that big lumbering left body kick that's going to be a problem for Parsons. Parsons, he does have aptitude on the ground for sure. He has some very interesting ground game. One of his fights, it was a really nice transition from takedown to Kimura to armbar. So if he can pull something like that out, I think he's going to make a huge name for himself. But I see this as a case of the UFC veteran showing him that there's levels to this. I think that Rodriguez is going to, like you said, he's comfortable in the pocket. He's going to stay upright, and he's going to hammer on this kid. So look for violence in this one. And next up, we have Mateusz Gamrot versus Jeremy Stephens. So many people, I'm sure, know about Jeremy Stephens, the once so-called hardest hitting 145er, now moving up to 155. So this will be contested at lightweight. He's been on a bit of a slide recently, to be honest. He was put out by Calvin Cater. That's one of 4 losses that he's on right now. But he still hits hard. He's still a veteran. He knows how to bang. And Gamrot's gonna have his hands full.
Right. I think Stevens, he's definitely a firefighter. He likes to be in there. Like you said, he's got really heavy hands. I like how he mixes it up with the kick sometimes. And he has that really deadly hook. And he sets them up with body shots. He's got a great chin. So I think the striking is definitely there. Um, but moving up 10 pounds, that is a lot. And a lot of guys struggle with that. So that's going to be really interesting to see how Gamrot handles that.
Especially because Gamrot, he's a well-rounded fighter. I don't think he's just going to be struggling with the striking and the hands of Gamrot, but Gamrot, he wrestles and strikes well out of both stances, so that's going to be a lot for Stevens to think about. And I mean, it's he's just one punch away from getting knocked out. But if he can fight a clean, technical fight, mix in wrestling for sure, which won't be easy against Stevens, then I think Gamrot has the tools to get this done. But as usual, there's always a highlight finish on the table when Jeremy Stevens is fighting. Either way. All right, so next up we have a bout that I'm really looking forward to: Gabriel Benitez versus Billy Quarantillo. Um, Quarantillo's been pretty active lately. He has a very cardio heavy style. He's not the fastest guy. I would say he's somewhat slow actually, and he doesn't have super heavy hands. He doesn't have that one shot knockout power that some people at featherweight do have, but he just wears guys down. I mean, his fight with um, Spike Carlisle, one of my favorite fights that I've ever watched. Spike, he was a huge 1 round fighter, and he came out, tried to put a foot through Quarantillo's jaw, got him down, was beating on him for the first round, and Quarantillo weathered the early storm, came back, and by the end, he was close to putting Spike out.
Right. I think that's his biggest asset. He's just super durable. And the longer the fight goes on, I think the more dangerous he is. I think he's one of those guys that sometimes he can start slow, but when he really gets in there and the adrenaline's going, he turns on. He's an absolute animal. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how Benitez handles that, because Benitez, he is also a brawler. He has some really heavy leg kicks, super heavy hands. He's got a good chin. I think this, you know, they're gonna go in and they're gonna have a little bit of that Mike Perry energy in there. So
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Benitez needs to avoid getting into super big firefights. He does have a killer straight left, and like you said, some brutal kicks to the body and legs. And he has a lot of success when he goes first. If he can impose his timing, yes, he wants a brawl, but he wants to be there first. He wants to kind of get Quarantillo off balance and not let him get started, because if you're letting Quarantillo build up into these combos, you're gonna get worn down. If you're gonna get pressured and put on the fence, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. So Benitez, he completely has the weapons to get it done. He's cleaner, he's more technical, faster. I think he has the power advantage. He just needs to fight a clean fight, and this one's gonna be an absolute banger. I guarantee it. If it's not, then I apologize to all the listeners, but this is probably the fight on the card that I'm most looking forward to.
all right, next up we have Misha Tate versus Marion Renault. Misha Tate has been absent for 4 or 5 years, I believe.
It's been quite a while.
She's been, I don't know, I think she's been over in Singapore doing some managing and things like that. But she is making her return, and she has declared that she's going for gold this time. So she's returning against Marion Renault. Very heavy kickboxer. Super nice hands. She's very durable, and she's an absolute cardio machine. You know, I think on the last card we covered Yana Kunitskaya, who Marion fought, and her cardio was off the charts. She was sort of getting beat in the first and second rounds, but she came back. Even though she lost, she bullied Yana in the third round, and it was really nice to see her endurance and her just fight through that. So that should be really interesting.
Yeah, Renault's one of my favorite fighters, and it saddens me that she's on this 4-fight losing streak, because I think it makes her look a lot worse than she really is. Like you said, all of the fights that she's been in have been close. She's been fighting to the final bell, and she does grow in strength. So sometimes a slow starter, and that can really hurt her because if she's beating the first 2 rounds and she amps up the pressure in the third, then she can't come back. But good all arounder, like you said, a heavy hitting kickboxer, good off her back, 2 triangle finishes in the UFC, which I love to see. Misha, her striking, I don't know if it's gonna be up to par. Like you said, she's been out for a while, and the women's divisions have come a long way from the one trick Ronda Rousey flipping people over and armbarring them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Renault showing up and hopefully showing people that the division has moved on, and people who are dropping fights are better than people in this division have ever been.
Right, and like you said, Renault, she does have 2 triangle finishes. She's obviously comfortable down on the ground. And Misha is a wrestler, that's what she's really good at. So she likes to look for those early takedowns and just kind of, just ground and pound on girls. So it should be interesting if that goes to the ground because I feel like there is a chance for Renault to really sort of nullify Misha's ground power. So I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to that one.
no, I Renault, she's comfortable off her back, so I'll be doubtless screaming at the TV for her to get up. But if she can secure a triangle finish, that would be 3 in the UFC, very impressive, and I'll be quite happy for it. So fingers crossed on Fight Night. And last up, we have the headliner of the evening, Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moises at lightweight. Most people know Islam. I mean, if you've heard of Khabib, you've probably heard of Islam. Very similar styles, just dominant wrestlers. They're looking to get you to the ground and pound on you and then submit you.
Right. And I think, as far as the wrestling, sort of takes them, um, all the guys from that Dagestan region, you know, their striking I think is really underrated. Um, because, as everyone knows, Khabib, he did knock down Connor and Makachev, and all the guys over there, Kamaev and all the Nurmagomedovs, they do have knockout finishes. And I think people just sort of count them as, one trick ponies. Um, but I really don't think that's the case. That being said, Thiago Moises is a ground guy, just an absolute jiu-jitsu wizard. So I feel like the ground matchup is super interesting. Um, my predictions, I think Islam's gonna keep it on the feet. Because he does wrestle a lot, and that's his main thing. But I really feel like his striking is super underrated, um, and the feet is the way to go, really. Because Thiago Moises, he does have some good hands. They're pretty heavy, um, but he's not super comfortable there. He can get caught, and it's not the cleanest. I think he still has a lot of growing room in the striking department.
No, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think because Moises, he's struggled a lot with volume, and if he's gonna play this game on the feet with Makachev, people know them as wrestlers, but I think he will get teed up on the feet. I believe it was the Michael Johnson fight that Thiago Moises had, where he absorbed almost 50 punches in the first round and basically had nothing to answer for it. I mean, Michael Johnson I think he's a different type and level of striker from Islam, but still, I think Islam will have the advantage there. So that's something that not a lot of people are going to expect, but I think it's going to be a good showcase for Islam, and I do hope that he keeps it on the feet because I think he will find success there.
Yeah, and as much as Moises' submission game is, just absolutely incredible, um, I don't think we've ever seen Makhachev get caught in a submission. On top, super heavy hips, and in guillotines or triangles or anything like that, where he's on top or even on the bottom, um, his awareness of the submissions is just amazing. Um, you'll see him in a guillotine, and he just keeps calm, and he knows exactly what to do, and the head just it just pops right out. Um, so I do think that Makhachev has the advantage in this one. Everywhere I feel like he's super comfortable. But that being said, Moises could just pull off another insane submission victory. So I would be happy with either, really.
All right, and that about wraps it up for this week. So if you liked what you heard, then tune in next week. We'll have more for you on Corey Sandhagen against TJ Dillashaw, the returning TJ Dillashaw. So thanks for listening, and we hope to see you soon.